Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Thursday, July 3rd, 2025, and on Thursdays we talk about knowledge and science. So here's an interesting synchronicity of events, if you will. Yesterday I talked about the importance of improving the world by improving yourself. A couple of weeks ago, the vlog theme was the sun, and I shared on the Thursday vlog some fun sun facts, if you will. And I discussed the day before several of the health and emotional benefits to proper sunlight exposure. Okay, but then just this week, my latest issue of Scientific American, the June 2025 issue, arrived via snail mail. And on the cover was a picture of the sun, and in large bold font, the caption was "The Sunshine Cure." Okay, great. So what's the connection then with today's vlog? Well, we know more than ever about applying our scientific knowledge about the sun's potential healing properties to the human body. And if you've ever suffered from a debilitating disease or condition or know someone who has, then you know that there's a lot of suffering that happens, and it becomes difficult to do just about anything beyond just trying to manage and survive with the pain. You can't even think about then trying to improve the world. You're just trying to get through the day. And consider the case, for example, of Dianna, aka Physics Girl. Any familiar with Physics Girl? I'm one of her 3.42 million subscribers. She has a YouTube channel, Physics Girl. And I was shocked to learn, some time ago, what she'd been going through over the last couple of years. And basically, she was suffering from the debilitating effects of long COVID. So anyway, I'll leave a link in the description below with respect to her channel's update, which actually is from last month, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So now the good news is that we've confirmed that sunlight can have remarkable curative effects, including boosting our immune systems. And nowadays we're in the earliest stages then of promoting something known as UV, ultraviolet phototherapy. That's right, UV phototherapy. With clinical trials and the like, especially for debilitating conditions such as multiple sclerosis, MS, and type 1 diabetes. Now, there's just been a few such clinical trials that have been completed thus far, but there seems to be something of a revolution happening in terms of how we think about light in relation to autoimmune diseases. Again, like MS and like type 1 diabetes. And these are the types of diseases that emerge typically when our body's own natural defense systems start to attack ourselves, start to break down, and viciously kind of turn against our own bodies and our own organs. So autoimmune diseases are thought to affect more than 350 million people worldwide, and effective treatments have been quite elusive. But now from the evidence of several of these studies, they're showing that UV light, the high energy portion of the solar spectrum that reaches the Earth, has the ability then to calm down our immune systems, or if our immune systems are starting to spiral out of control. The researchers are finding that UV therapy has a positive effect then on a wide range of autoimmune problems, including type 1 diabetes, including Crohn's disease, colitis, and others. So the next step then involves figuring out what's the precise mechanism at work. Scientists hope to be able to determine the pathways through which the UV light causes the immune system to back off. And they're tracking now how molecules in the skin, like urocanic acid, respond to a shot of photons by triggering a series of signals that then end up reaching all of the organs within our bodies. And if successful, we might be able to finally determine then why people who live in low light areas are more susceptible to autoimmune diseases. And so we have this new discipline, photoimmunology. Makes sense. Apparently, our bodies walk a fine line with UV exposure. Too much damages the system, which is why we have to be really careful with sun exposure and things like skin cancers. Yet in the right amounts, UV light can help things like psoriasis by tamping down our inflammatory responses. So, in fact, the research dates all the way back to 1940, which showed that people's exposure in the United States and Canada to more solar radiation had higher rates of skin cancer on the one hand, but at the same time had lower rates of cancer mortality overall. So it would seem to be almost like a contradiction. Some good, some bad. What's going on? By 1980, we confirmed that vitamin D, stimulated by sun exposure, was the micronutrient that prevented rickets. And then scientists everywhere were finding an inverse correlation then between vitamin D levels and the risks of dozens of diseases, everything from blood pressure, or high blood pressure, to things like breast cancer, from diabetes to stroke to dementia, depression, many other things. But the thing is that vitamin D, if you give people with these conditions supplements, vitamin D supplements, that didn't seem to help the diseases, to help the conditions. So it's more complicated than simply receiving vitamin D supplements. But with MS, again, this is an autoimmune disease, the results have been much more compelling. That is, the prevalence rates for MS are close to zero near the equator. And then there's kind of an inverse correlation with each degree of latitude, to the point where you reach over 100 cases per 100,000 people in the northernmost latitudes. So what's happening? In fact, just as dramatic, kids then who spent less than 30 minutes a day outside had twice the risk of MS compared to those who spent between 30 and 60 minutes per day, and 5 times the risks of those who spent more than an hour each day out in the sun, or average more than an hour in the sun each day. Incredible. So, as ever, we have to recognize, though, or remember that correlation is not causation. So, there's more rigorous research underway now to try to determine exactly what's the underlying mechanism at play here. A clinical trial, a recent one, has demonstrated some rather promising results. So they compared they took a sample of patients who had an early stage version of MS, and then they split them into an experimental and a control group. And so the experimental group received 8 weeks of treatment with a narrowband UV light box with 3 sessions each week, each lasting just a few minutes. And the other half didn't get the light therapy at all. Okay, so that was the only difference. And what they found is that within a week of the first treatments, the treatment group's inflammatory proteins had dropped and remained lower. Their disease severity scores then dropped 13% 3 months later, even after the light treatment stopped, compared to, from the start of the trial, compared to a rise of 14% by those who hadn't received the light treatment. And then, most dramatically of all, after 1 year, all of the control group members had full-blown MS, but 30% of the UV group had been spared that fate. So again, it wasn't a perfect correlation. There's something going on there. And so the broader issue seems to be that our autoimmune systems seem to be more suppressed if we spend all or the vast majority of our time indoors, especially in our sort of modern systems. And we start to lose the kind of healthy natural set points that our body typically establishes, again, with proper sunlight exposure. So sun exposure effects in the right amounts then appear to stimulate our anti-inflammatory defenses and help stave off a number of autoimmune conditions in particular, and beyond MS. And so our search continues for the so-called holy grail of the specific molecules or molecular pathways through which the skin cells tell our immune systems to sort of chillax, okay, and then start fighting infections and disease more effectively. Our skin holds the key in many respects, but we just don't know precisely why as yet. What we do know, of course, is that our skin is much more than just a barrier. It's the largest organ, of course, in our bodies. And it plays a crucial role in terms of our neuroendocrine systems. It's constantly in conversation with our brains in terms of how to fine-tune our systems, how to maintain our overall health. And it's a major site then that's for our immune systems in terms of being stocked with all kinds of body defending or, worst case scenario, body attacking cells if things go awry. So we just know that the ultraviolet light stirs up all of these cells in our neurotransmitters that are present in our skin. So we don't know exactly what the right amount of exposure to sunlight should be that elicits these positive effects and results. But we know that too much, of course, produces carcinogenic effects. So what's the exact Goldilocks, exposure? And more importantly, what are the specific mechanisms that will optimize our cellular responses? So that's where the research is these days. Okay? And we do know then that phototherapy almost always has positive effects, at least with some daily exposure to sunlight. This has innumerable positive effects, some of which, again, I talked about a couple of weeks ago, including the release of healthy neurotransmitters like serotonin and regulating our melatonin levels, allowing for better sleep, enhancing our health in many other ways, helping to prevent depression and seasonal affective disorder or SAD, and reducing the risk of certain cancers and other metabolic disorders. So lots of good things come from, again, limited or proper and safe exposure to the sunlight. So as Sheryl Crow would sing, right? You really should soak up the sun and reap the many health benefits that can provide. And as you ensure your own and enhance your own health, well, you can start to do much more to improve the world around you. So hence the link to yesterday's vlog as well. In fact, one woman who suffered from MS and has benefited from UV light treatment put it this way. She says, MS robs you of so much. You can't get out of bed, can't go to work, can't clean your house, can't get your groceries. You've got to find rides just to get to the doctors. But now she's been, with her ultraviolet light treatment, she's been able to get back to weight training and yoga and guided meditations and doing charity work, among other things, okay? And all of this was just a few minutes of UV light treatment each morning. And she says then, or she concludes, quote, "It's so empowering to find a treatment that lets you actually take care of yourself. This is kind of amazing," end quote. So, and indeed, I have to agree. I almost always find, just in general, new knowledge and scientific advances to be amazing, but especially if they are able to, or when they can help us solve everything from the personal problems that we're experiencing and the health issues to ultimately global problems as well. So let's do it, shall we? Make sure you get out and get some sun again today. All right, in the meantime, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. I'll see you soon.